Welcome back to the Lore and Valor podcast. I'm your host, Justin Watson, and I am joined today by Josh Hayes, Air Force veteran, retired law enforcement officer, and author of science fiction and fantasy for, amongst others, Chris Kennedy Publishing, Atheon, and Bane. Thanks for joining us, Josh.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
And also Sean Patrick Hazlett, veteran of the United States Army and the 11th Armored Cavalry Black Horse. His job in the Army was to torture individuals like me who showed up at the National Training Center by being an effective opposing force. He's also a veteran of the financial world at a very high level and the author of more than 50 short stories from publishers ranging from Bane to Galaxy's Edge to Vice Media, amongst many others. Thank you for joining us, Sean.
Hey, thanks for having me.
No, pleasure to have you here, and I'm glad we can do this exchange thing because I got to go on Sean's channel Through a Glass Darkly, which I highly recommend, and talk about the Ukraine war and the employment of artillery and rockets there, which was a lot of fun. And I haven't gotten to talk shop as an artilleryman for a while, so thank you for that opportunity.
Oh, and there's also another episode that's going to come up talking about your writing career. And by the way, did you check out the Simple Sabotage Manual yet?
I did not yet. Sorry.
Okay. All right.
I will.
There's another Easter egg for your. If you ever want to sabotage a corporate meeting, the OSS has has an answer for you.
Yeah. There's a lot of knowledge to be had from our forebears who fought the greatest conflagration in human history. So Josh and Sean have joined me tonight because I wanted a crew to go over the really super interesting Netflix anthology series, Love, Death, and Robots. There's not a lot like Love, Death, and Robots on TV, and the closest thing I can think of is the old heavy metal animated movies from the 80s and 90s, if you guys remember those. So we're going to we'll probably get through about half the season today just to try to keep this, somewhat brief. But I know we're going down the list episode by episode, and we'll talk about the impressions we took from them, how we feel about the writing of them, and obviously the art style and everything else is fair game. But we start out with exit strategies. And I want to be clear that Josh and I know who wrote most of these. Sean is blind intentionally. He did not look up who wrote the short stories that these sci-fi, fantasy, and horror shorts are based on. So if he says something that hurts feelings because this is one of your favorite authors, he doesn't know who it is. He's just giving you his honest impression. So, and Sean told me before the show, he's really eager to talk about exit strategies, which premise of exit strategies is 3 robot tourists examining the post-apocalyptic remains of human civilization on Earth. So, Sean, take it away.
So, when I watched the first episode, do you ever have that feeling when you watch something or you experience something where you just want to go outside and just pop a random stranger in the fucking mouth? In the mouth? Yeah,
I said 5 that one out. Sean, Jesus.
Well, we should have started with a different. We should have started with a different one. I sort of stopped myself, but
I'm leaving it in. I'm leaving it in. Keep going. We're doing this live. Not really, but go ahead.
Okay, it's just like, first of all, there's the personality of the robots, right? They're just like these snarky little pissant pieces of uselessness that clearly never lived in a world or a civilization or a place where you actually had to deal with people and had to. It's just everything's snarky. Everything is just it's just I just wanted to grab one by the throat, throw them up against the effing wall, and just beat them until they were nothing but transistors and capacitors and resistors, inductors, and whatever circuit element is your favorite, maybe diodes. And then I wanted to take them outside and re-envision the scene from Office Space, where you have
I was just going to talk about the printer
beating and beating and beating.
Someday I just
nothing left.
This piece of shit.
and I want Ice Cube playing in the background at full blast, where I'm just pulverizing these robots. It's just everything was just so predictable. It's libertarians in the ocean. We know it's a dumb idea. Just say it's a dumb idea. Don't be like a little snarky, like around the stab in the back, like nonsense. Like I could not handle. I get so angry at this thing. Like, yes, it's a bad idea. Just like everything had to be about like, oh, it's just like. Anyway,
Sean, when you started talking,
whoever wrote this, like obviously had never been in a fight, because if they had, they wouldn't talk that way, because you get popped in the mouth. Right? Like if I talk that way in the neighborhood, I get popped in the mouth, and I would deserve it. Anyway, so that's my initial impression.
So you started talking about transistors, or maybe diodes are your favorite part. I started to get to very Dennis Leary vibe there. You know,
I'm Irish. I'm Irish. I can't help it.
Maybe the subcockles, maybe even in the liver, maybe in the kidneys. We just don't know. So that was a strong opening. I agree with you that the dialogue is, I tend to think of it, he did not write this, so I can reference him. It's like the worst highlights of Joss Whedon-esque, so much snarkier and quippier than normal people talk. And I like a good quip, and I like some good snark, but when you overdo it, it gets very smarmy. Josh, how are you feeling after this first episode? We know, because you've seen the whole show, right?
Yeah.
So I should say Exit Strategies is a continuation of a season 1 episode with the robots where they did this before, and there's a few running jokes that fall over.
I thought the first one was a little bit more down to earth, relatively speaking. And you're right, the snark really was kind of over the top in this episode. I did think the second time I watched it, I realized that the author was kind of making fun of both political camps, if you want to call it political camps, because he was making fun of basically rednecks in the first, where he met the cowboy survival place, and then later on he made fun of all the uppity elitists that wanted to be on the ocean,
the big tech billionaires,
right? And I didn't catch that the first time. And
no, but he wasn't, though. Like, he was making fun of libertarians, because the big tech billionaires that want to, like, had that cockamamie desire to live outside of, a nation state on, like, in the ocean.
Yeah,
is definitely like a libertarian, like it's like the subset of libertarians in Silicon Valley. And it's cockamamie idea, because you have anything in a salty, like, sea environment, it's going to corrode. It's a dumb idea.
Yeah.
And like that part's accurate, like that it's a dumb idea is accurate, like it's not, but just the way it was done, like he's definitely not making fun of both. Like, whoever wrote this is not making fun of both. It's clearly directed at one side. Like, there's no doubt in my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you disagree on that, because that makes for a more interesting episode.
I'm like near Silicon Valley, right? I'm like, I know some.
And I was about to say, you maybe have more insight into that than we do. I'm Texas, and Josh, I think you're somewhere in flyover country with me.
Yes.
So I don't know about them. They're coastal elites there, Sean. You would have better insight than I would. But to be fair, Sean, I kind of took it your way too. I think maybe there was an attempt at even-handedness, that when you see this futuristic sea-going community, I tend to think of big tech billionaires who maybe sway a little bit left.
Yeah.
I feel like maybe he's trying to get credit for even-handedness without actually being even-handed.
He just didn't do it well enough.
Yeah. Perhaps is one way to read it. But Josh,
and to be 100% accurate, right? There are libertarians who sway both left and right.
Sure.
It's just given the portrayal of the Texans in the very beginning, and given how high-minded it was, I'm being sarcastic,
right.
snarky. Yeah. I had to be snarky on this
right.
one. I very much doubt that that nuance was in any way, shape, or form kind of floated into the mind of that writer.
I did like the only gag that I really enjoyed was the mines blowing up, and the robot was like, oh, I'm sure they're gonna be fine. They're old, they're not gonna blow up. And as soon as he says it, the mine blows up and kills the bird. I thought that was hilarious.
Okay. I'll go for that gag. Anything
Yeah,
else about the?
No, I just wanted to fight somebody after it was over because it was just like I didn't like it. It wasn't that what they were poking fun of. It was just that like the way that they did it, like this condescending, snarky, like how could anybody possibly think that there's another side to anything?
Yeah.
And it's just like it's lazy and it's stupid. Like there are two sides to every debate, and there are good points on either side. And if you are that lazy that you can't present the other side in a
Very
intelligible way, like,
you set up straw man. You set up straw men rather than addressing the best version of your opponent's argument. Yeah, and it is lazy. But Josh, I feel like we kind of cut you off a little bit. Do you have anything else? About
no, that was it. No,
okay.
I mean, it's interesting that there's only a couple of episodes in this whole collection that didn't make me want to bash my face in the keyboard because they were so depressing. Like, even though like they were talking about the end of the world, right? And they were looking at there's no humans alive and everybody's dead. I still felt like I was like, that it's kind of funny. Like it's interesting. It makes me kind of happy at the end. And then all the rest of them, I just want to like stab myself in the throat and go like, oh, it's so horrible.
When we get to our next episode, I'm going to disagree. I think the next one, although it's very dark, I think it's still a heroic tale. I would argue.
That is true.
But yeah, Sean, you want to punch someone in the face over this one. Josh, you kind of enjoyed it because it was a more lighthearted take in the midst of what is a very dark anthology. I acknowledge that.
Yeah.
I will give 20 seconds for Sean to rant a little more if you have anything else you want to say about it. Go ahead. You're on the clock.
No, I just like I didn't find it funny at all. Like not because it offended. Like I'm happy to be offended, right? But like, if you're gonna offend me, be funny about it.
Yeah.
Don't be snarky and condescending and make me want to pop you in the mouth. That's all.
I do not want to make this into the Arcane show because I'm already doing one of those. But when I compare something as overt as the Exit Strategies episode with Arcane, which I think still has kind of a left-leaning worldview, but is written very well with fully fleshed out characters and does not feel like it is attacking strawmen who don't really exist.
Yeah.
It does get a little frustrating when people don't put in the effort to be. You can still have an opinion. You can have an opinion that has no resemblance to mine as long as you put in the effort, are honest, and don't forget to entertain me.
Right.
I love Trek from the original series through some of Voyager, but definitely through Deep Space Nine.
Yeah.
And that show was always progressive.
Right.
And I'm
I love Deep Space Nine. Like
Deep Space Nine
that's probably one of my favorites.
Yeah, same.
Deep Space Nine has an argument for best science fiction on the small screen ever. I tend to prefer Babylon 5, despite how campy and cheesy the effects are. But I dearly love Babylon 5. Anyway, digressing. We're not talking about those.
I like that as well. But anyway, sorry.
Yeah. We should get together and talk
about
that's
a whole other show because I can go forever on B5.
Yeah, we can do a retro panel on a good old classic TV sci-fi someday. But returning to Love, Death, and Robots, getting into the next episode. Oh, wait, Sean, do you want to know who wrote this episode now that you've got your rant off your chest?
Why don't we wait until the very end so that people watch all the way through to...
Cool.
Well, I need to not have a reaction. That's well, it's still not fresh, but yeah, just so that let the audience know at the very end that way.
Okay, fine. So the second episode, Bad Traveling, which is about this. It's reminiscent of an old whaling vessel. It feels like to me. The animation style's a little more stylized. The people are a little more exaggerated, but still. Not anything surreal or abstract. Just definitely has a aesthetic they're going for. And you have a survival situation on the ship. Looks like they're in the middle of a storm, and they get attacked by a monstrous crab, which sounds dumb as shit. but is actually super cool. Like, I mean, I'm saying
Right.
this out loud, and I'm like, I'm not selling this episode very well.
Yeah.
Y'all, it was amazing.
Right.
And super gruesome. So again, like Josh pointed this out earlier, these almost none of these episodes are for the faint of heart.
Yeah.
You know,
And even if it is, like you mentioned, this one is kind of a heroic tale, it's still pretty difficult to watch sometimes.
Yeah. So we're following the captain of this vessel as he deals with the monster and mutinous crew, and I adored this one. So I let Sean lead off last time. Josh, talk to me about this episode. How did you
Sweet.
feel watching this one?
I really did. I like this episode. And not because I'm friends with the writer, but because I love the director. I've watched everything that David Fincher has ever done, and I absolutely love his style of directing.
Is this the David Fincher 7?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Sorry.
Yeah, no. And
Yeah,
so
David Fincher. Yeah.
That. So I went into it knowing I was probably going to like it. So I was maybe kind of biased going into it. But the subtle characterization of all the characters that everybody felt, even though they were only on screen, some of them for very brief moments, it felt like everybody got a really good painted picture of who they were, and it happened so fast that it was, I don't know, I thought it was very good writing and very good presentation of the characters. I know we're going to talk about it a little bit, but when he does the papers and they vote, when he comes back later and was like, everybody, you know, I don't know if we're going to talk.
By the way, spoilers.
Yeah,
spoilers are clear. We're talking
spoiler.
about episodes that are 10 to 20 minutes. Spoilers are clear.
Right.
We're cleared hot.
So
go ahead.
When he comes back with he makes the kind of the joke about the paper, saying, "I know who wrote what," and now everybody's playing these mind games about what, and then at the end when he says everybody made the wrong decision, and so then he made the decision that I'm just gonna kill everybody. I'm like, that was such a great reveal on how they presented that whole thing. I absolutely loved it. So I love this episode. I know you guys did too, but the artwork was fantastic. It was when the little things came out and he started smashing the dude's skull so the babies could eat. I was like, oh so my gnarly. God, yeah,
so gnarly. Sean, you go ahead.
So I also love this episode. It was either my favorite or second favorite episode of the series, and it felt very Lovecraftian to me. There's actually a story that was in I think the magazine of fantasy and science fiction, and I want to say it's by Ian Tregullis or something like that, that was similar to this, where there's a different kind of Lovecraftian beastie in it, but it reminded me a little bit of that. The other thing too is the main protagonist looks like H.P. Lovecraft. Like,
fair enough.
It really does.
Yeah.
So what I really liked about this, though, is this, like, the way that he managed this mutinous crew is he basically put out, like, every step they took, he just dangled a noose, and then he just waited for them to put their heads in the noose, and it's like, well, it's your fault. You put your head in the noose.
Right.
And, I mean, it's a little twisted that I like that aspect of it, but it's almost like they could retitle this, 5 strategies for succeeding in corporate America, and it would have been just as good.
Nice. So what I loved about it is watching through the first time. I don't know if you guys experienced this too. You're not sure about the captain's motivations at first, because he seems to be trying to pawn off danger on the crew. Maybe he's trying to pawn, like when he does we open up with the crab's initial attack, but then when they're trying to deal with it, he's like, oh, this is the only fair way, we're going to draw straws.
Yeah.
And then you're not sure if he's in the right. And then he, the big guy who dies very quickly, uses the straw drawing to say, okay, now this was to select me as captain, so I say throw him in with the crab.
Right.
And then we get the gnarly scene where they've got the crab has the body, the mangled torso.
Oh yeah, I like that.
One of the humans and is using it as a sock puppet to talk to him. So gnarly. And like throughout the whole thing, every trick he's playing on the crew to survive, it feels very Machiavellian, it feels very cold-blooded, but at the end he is the one who's trying to protect innocence. That like I really love that character of, going back to Deep Space Nine, Elam Garrick, the character of Garrick from Deep Space Nine. Like I always love those characters who have a code and are arguably trying for benevolent ends, but push the limit real hard.
It's like the ultimate ends justify the means type of argument. Because you're dealing with them.
It's like a grimdark character, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like it borders, because I feel like grimdark, depending on how you define it, maybe the characters compromised more in grimdark very often. Like I think of like Game of Thrones before it objectively went to shit on TV, because I feel like whether you like grimdark or not, there are problems with the later seasons.
Yeah.
But there is still this problem with Game of Thrones that anybody who seems like they're moral is automatically stupid. Like Ned Stark to a certain extent, and Robb Stark definitely.
Yeah.
Just they're like, oh, these people are moral and they're dumb.
Right.
Yeah, it's like there are people who are both moral and not cognitively challenged.
You're walking into a trap. I know it's a trap, but I must go. I'm like, come on.
Or like the Red Wedding. Like I kind of appreciate the Red Wedding in a little sense, because I do like the subversion of, oh, well, the prince married the scullery maid. It's like in real medieval Europe, if the prince marries a scullery maid, it fractures an alliance and you end up with a war.
Yeah.
Yeah, that like the trade-off of being nobility and not having to live like a barely above an animal human in that period for most people is that a lot of your life was dictated, including who you married.
Right.
Which is why courtly love from that period, and going even up into the Edwardian and Victorian eras, courtly love, as they thought about it, was not between man and wife. It was the unfulfilled love of someone they actually had romantic feelings for, because most of the marriages were arranged. Again, little digression on the Red Wedding aside, I can appreciate.
By the way, I love the Red Wedding. Like I remember like reading the book and
me too,
seeing that happen, and I'm like, oh my god! I'm like, this is amazing. Like this is great.
I had read the books and then watched the show, and my wife did not watch the show with me. She didn't watch the show until like season 6, and then we had to start over and watch it all the way through. And the episode before the Red Wedding, it might even have been that episode. She turns to me, she goes, I really love Robb. He's my favorite character. And I knew what was coming. I said nothing. I just sat there.
Yeah,
and then it happened. And
he looked smack you in the face, because good people die too.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And to us, I liked it to a certain extent, but at a certain point, Game of Thrones crossed over for me. Mm-hmm. And I was like, yeah, but now I don't care about any of these people. Yeah, it's realistic, but I could go ahead. I could start quoting the J.R.R. Tolkien versus George Martin rap battle. If you guys haven't seen that, remind me to send you the link, because that thing's amazing.
Nice.
But this character to me stays right in that pocket for me, that like he doesn't lose his center, and he's still a very capable survivor, and he's not a fool.
Well, and he didn't,
but he still retains his fool.
He didn't have like any brawn. Like he had to definitely use his brains and his wits to get out of multiple situations, and he had to do it quickly and under duress and under stress. And those type of characters, when they come up on top, it's like he did good on multiple fronts, and it's fun to see characters that are smart like that.
Yeah,
but it's also ruthless. Let's let like
100%. Yeah.
And like you pointed out the twist earlier, Josh, I thought that was so effective. When he does the vote and he says, I've marked it, so I know who the traitors are. And he gives everyone you give everyone that out of like, oh, he doesn't realize I was one of the ones who voted. He must have missed me.
Yeah.
Right.
And then at the very end, when he turns it on him, you all marked X.
Yeah.
Cowards.
Yeah, because he gave him a chance, right?
Yeah.
Again, he another opportunity where he gave them the news. like to say, no, like I can, like, no, you should sacrifice me because these two people are probably innocent because I'm one of the people who voted. Not a single person did that, right? They let other people die thinking that, oh, I got away with it. He thought they were the wrong person, right? So it just made it easier for him to push the responsibility for their deaths on them, right?
And
well, terrible people, so...
one final note on my part is when I rewatched it, this wasn't something that really hit me because I was absorbed in the story more, but I paid more attention to the actual fight choreography in the animation when they come for him at night and he has to use the axe and his pistol.
Yeah.
It's actually a really great action sequence in
great
its own
fight
right,
scene.
too.
Yes.
Yeah, like it's the least important thing about the episode. It could have been just a placeholder, but when you actually watch it, it's very artful. You feel the impacts, you feel the shots. He's a little handy with the steel. He gets maybe a statistically unlikely number of headshots, but
yes,
I guess they're at close range. We'll let it slide.
When he shot the guy when they were wrestling, I thought that was great because he did it point blank, like underneath, and I was like, oh, that's really good.
Yeah.
Like who? I don't want to know who wrote it yet, but were all these stories written specifically for the series, or did they appear elsewhere?
So an insight specifically to Bad Traveling and into another one later on we'll get to probably next episode. But this was actually written like 20 years ago. This specific story, and it was sold a long time ago, and then projects fell through and it never got made, and then it kind of shifted hands. But yeah, it's been floating around. Bad Traveling has been floating around for a really long time.
Okay, yeah, because it's excellent. Like the story, even you take yourself away from the kind of the cartoon elements, and not elements, but it's a really solid story in terms of craft.
Agreed.
That's why it comes out on top of me. Is in addition to just having a lot of cool elements, is I think it has the best character arc and the best beginning, middle, and end of anything in this series so far. So that's Bad Traveling, and that's took up probably what's going to be the bulk of this episode because we all love that one pretty much. But then we're on to next is, I think it's The Pulse of the Machine, right?
The Very Pulse of the Machine, yeah.
The Very Pulse of the Machine. This is a psychedelic trip that seems heavily inspired by Hunter S. Thompson and 2001: A Space Odyssey. Is the best way I can summarize this one. I'll save my opinions to the end. Sean, you get to lead off since we're alternating. How did you feel about The Very Pulse of the Machine?
So you all seen Chernobyl, the HBO series?
I have, yes.
Yeah.
So what's on the meter? Like, not great, not terrible, right?
Right.
Right. That's kind of where I would put this one. Like, it was very mystical, kind of psychedelic, like you said, Justin. But again, the story is this woman's dragging another woman across this psychedelic landscape for 30 minutes or however long the episode is, and finds out that she can save her consciousness by, I think, again, spoiler alert, by kind of throwing herself into whatever the Matrix is and dying on this weird planet. So it was okay. I didn't have a strong reaction, positively or negatively. I don't think it was a strong story, but it wasn't a weak story. It kind of started out with a theme of self-sacrifice and then ended with the theme of transformation. But
yeah, I'm kind of in your camp as well. I didn't absolutely hate it, but sometimes, like with a lot of these, well, not with Bad Traveling, but with a lot of the other ones that followed, there was always some kind of like intellectual something that happens, and it's not just a straightforward story. And I think this one would have been really good just as a straightforward survival story. Like, let her have the running out of oxygen, and she's got to fix her suit, she's got to do all this, and to get back to orbit or wherever she's going. And that would have been a really compelling journey to see her make that, even if she's having the the hallucinations, even if the drugs kind of affected her in a different way. I think if you would have just had a more concrete ending than this etheric kind of jumble of, like you said, Space Odyssey 2001, where you're like, what the hell just happened and why is a baby floating in space? I don't understand what just happened for 20 minutes.
He wasn't sure what he would do with the newfound power, but he was sure he would think of something. If you've never read the Arthur C. Clarke, that's a pretty cool little resonance he sets up.
Yeah,
with the chapter with the monkeys, that one of the most famous scene, when the bone goes up in the air, the line in the I think it's just a novella, not even a full novel, is, the monkey wasn't sure what he'd do with the newfound power, but he was sure he would think of something. And then you go to the space age, and then it ends with Dave Bowman.
Oh, nice.
When Dave Bowman super evolves into whatever is next for humanity at the end of
Right.
2001. He wasn't sure what he would do with the newfound power, but he was sure he'd think of something.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's
I've never
pretty
read the
cool.
book, so that's a good. Yeah, I like that.
I'm paraphrasing. The quote might not be exactly that, but I do remember those from the book. So, big Arthur C. Clarke fans, if you remember that differently, please feel free to correct me in the comments below. But yeah, so this one, when I first watched it, and I'm not going to strongly disagree with either of you on this one. I think you're both pretty fair in your judgment. The first time I watched it, it really slid off me, for much of the same reasons you're talking about. Watching it a second time, it didn't hugely elevate it, but I could appreciate more the idea of Io as this synthetic life, like semi-sentient artificial intelligence that is able to communicate. It's a theme from Bad Traveling. They're using a human corpse's brain to communicate with humans. This one for seemingly more benevolent ends, maybe.
Yeah.
Because we
seemed
do
like that.
Yeah. Because they play with the idea. So she's on the drugs, and like you said, Josh, could have worked very well as a survival tale where she's also hallucinating and having to survive both the hallucinations and, trekking across the volcanic surface of Io with its sulfur dioxide atmosphere.
Right.
Pretty tough task in and of itself. But the way they played the narcotics, it creates doubt as to whether, what she's seeing is real or not.
Right.
But we end with a POV shot from an approaching spacecraft and her hailing, presumably as one with the planet Io. So I think my biggest problem with this at this point is not so much that it's weak, it's that it's not an encapsulated story in any real sense of the word. Because what's interesting is, well, what are the implications of this? Who created Io? Why is it there? I'm not saying it's invalid to leave that mysterious.
Right.
I don't prefer it.
Yeah.
Is where I'm at. And we're going to get into that, probably not this recording, but when we get to another episode. I think there's another episode that suffers from that as well, this was a good start. What else? Which is...
I think the author also was just trying to be cute and subvert the trope of Deus Ex Machina. You kind of just reverse it. So I don't know what the Latin is for, machine from, machine saves you from God, right?
Yeah,
but that's kind of what this episode was.
Sean, that's a great point, because that's a thought I had when she's on the cliff, and it's like death I'll either live forever or die. And I'm like, I was thinking, like, this is a very, and there's not that there's anything wrong with telling these kind of stories, but it's a very atheistic worldview, because as someone with a religion who believes in an afterlife, I would not have made her choice.
Right.
I would have, like, no, I think I'm going to die what I am, because I'm aware of what I am and I know what I believe about the afterlife. I don't think I'm going to risk entrusting my persona to weird alien machine I just met on a bad acid trip.
And I think
that's a great point, Sean.
One thought that I just had was that one thing I love about short stories is the ability to do ambiguity. Ambiguity.
Whew.
I like ambiguity.
I'm a writer. I'm a writer.
It's like antiquity, only different.
Yeah, I'm a writer, not a talker. I love being able to do that in short stories, but it seems like they took it like to another level instead of, like, they could have done that, but brought it down just a bit. Like if you didn't have the entire psychedelic experience of we don't know whether or not she's actually having a psychedelic event or this is real, and then if it was real have the transference, that would have been cool. Like because when we know it's real, but they kind of took the ambiguity and then the psychedelic experience of all of that and mashed it all together, and I was just like, I don't know what the hell's going on, and I want to like it, but I don't have enough to like it actually. I don't know.
I mean, it definitely makes you think, right? It makes you question, like, what is consciousness, right? Are we, are all our ideas in our head, or do our ideas come from something else? Is the mind an antenna or a transducer of some sort, right? Or, where are those ideas coming from? Are you pulling them? Are they coming from you? Are they coming from something else?
Right.
What happens when you die? What happens when you die if you transfer your, are you really transferring your consciousness, or are you just transferring the data that's in your mind? So it raises a bunch of really intriguing and existential questions. It just, didn't do it in a way that was not confusing.
Right. Exactly.
And confusing in a suboptimal way.
Right.
Stories can have a little bit of confusion, but you should know that you're supposed to be confused, not be questioning what the hell the author's getting at.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'd give that one like a C plus B minus maybe, because I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it.
Yeah.
I think we're at 36 minutes, but I think we can cover this next one pretty quickly. It's Night of the Miniature or Mini Dead, Josh.
The Mini Dead. Night of the Mini Dead.
Night of the Mini Dead. I think its prime virtue is that it's only 7 minutes long. What do you guys think?
Yeah, no, I actually, this was one of the ones that I liked, but only because it was so ridiculous. And I like it's sped up, so everybody's like, and you can't really hear what's going on. And at the end, you hear the fuck it, and then they light off the nukes, and I'm like, I knew it was gonna be ridiculous when the too many people get out and they start banging in the graveyard. And he's on top of the thing and he's like junking back and forth and he knocks the statue over and then the cross turns upside down and the lightning comes down and smotes him. I'm like, okay, this is going to be great. It had no story value whatsoever, but it was super fun to watch.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was Team America for claymation, is
100%.
without the music, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was worth a chuckle. I do think I don't mind it being there. I did laugh while I was watching it, I'm not gonna lie, but I do think it would have quickly worn out its welcome if it were if it were any longer.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're at 37 minutes. So any closing thoughts before I close this out? I think we can all agree probably at this point we're about halfway through the season, and Bad Traveling is the clear leader so far of what we've been talking about.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I mean, there was only one episode of the whole thing that I absolutely hated, and we haven't talked about that one yet. So
cool.
Far, yeah.
I hope it's one that Sean or I love, so we can get some good,
we could
good
fight
debate
about
in there.
Get into the arena.
Yeah. Sean, anything before we wrap up?
Yeah, just the first episode, just don't watch it like in a city or where there's people where you could easily like go outside and like, unleash.
Or if you loved it, come box Sean.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't care how big you are. I just need to wail on something after watching that thing. And the second one, I really like. It was really good. I really enjoyed it. I think well executed story arc, as Justin pointed out, and very, very Lovecraftian, and it had a good beginning, middle, and end.
Yeah.
And then the last one was like a fun little diversion. There wasn't much story in there, but it was kind of Team America without the politics and the music.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So we'll outro now. So Josh, what is going on in your writing life? What's out now that people can grab from you? And what are you excited about coming up next?
One thing.
Sean,
One
did you?
thing.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
One before. Sorry, I don't mean to gate crash your podcast.
No, go
but,
ahead. Go ahead.
Who are the authors?
Do we want to do that
Okay.
now, or do we want to wait till we're all the way through the season?
We probably should do it now because I think people may have been expecting to hear it on this episode.
Okay. I'm cold blooded enough. I would have made him wait till the next episode. But go ahead, Josh.
Man, I'm not. This is non-alcoholic beer. Exit strategies.
It's ambiguity. It's ambiguity.
Yeah, ambiguity.
Your speech is very ambiguous.
That's true. John Scalzi wrote that. Bad Traveling was Neil Asher. And coincidentally, I'll pimp my own show. If you want more information on Bad Traveling and Mason's Rats, I've got 2 episodes with Neil Asher, one from this last Monday, and then like 3 weeks ago, I had him on the show. Really great guy and a lot of insight into those stories.
I watched both of those. I second that nomination. Those are both very interesting interviews.
Yeah, he's a fun guy.
I'll link to those in the liner notes below. Go ahead, Josh.
Oh, cool. Thanks. The Very Pulse of the Machine was written by Michael Swanwick. And then Night of the Mini Dead was Jeff Fowler and Tim Miller.
Tim Miller. You all know him better from Deadpool, probably.
Really?
Yeah. The first one.
Interesting.
That makes that tracks.
Yeah.
I think so. I think it's yeah. So anyway, definitely check these guys out on their YouTube channels. So Josh Hayes is a member of Keystroke Medium. He does great work about genre fiction over there multiple times a week. I know what your schedule is. Sean Patrick Hazlett has Through a Glass Darkly, which is a great channel that covers geopolitics, the paranormal, and also genre to a certain extent. Great channel. Recommend them both. Again, Sean, anything before I get into the outro? We're good? We're good? Okay, cool.
Yeah, we're
good. Josh, what's going on in your writing life? What's out now that people can grab, and what are you excited about in the near future?
Okay, so I'm working on the first book in my new Weaponized trilogy. I was about 3/4 of the way through it 2 weeks ago, and then just realized that wasn't working, and so I had to delete 40,000 words and then restart, and so now I'm about halfway through, and that'll be out later on this fall. My series Tranquility is finished. Books 1 and 2 are out. The 3rd book is in edits right now, and that should be out here in the next month or so. And then I'm excited about writing a fantasy book that hopefully will get picked up by Baen later on this year. And it's a standalone that may or may not lead into a trilogy after that. But fantasy is I make all my bones on Mill Sci-Fi, and I'm very successful at it, but I really that's where my heart is in fantasy, and so I'm really excited to step into that arena and write in that.
Cool. You know, a Baen trilogy is actually 5 books, right? You're aware of that?
Oh yeah. Well, actually, I found that out by accident because I absolutely love the Saga of the Forgotten Warrior, and I thought that was a trilogy, and I got to the end of book 3, and I'm like 5 pages from the end of book 3, and I'm like, this is not over. And then I finished and I was like, what the hell is this? And I didn't know I had to go into Wikipedia, and I was like, there's 2 more. Yeah. So then when I saw Larry in Vegas, I said, Larry, this is what I think is happening. Tell me if I'm right or not. And he said, you're super close. You're super close. The only person that got it right was Jim Butcher so far. So I absolutely love that series.
Nice. Sean, what's going on in your world? What's out now that people can read your work or your editing? Sean's a very accomplished editor of anthologies. And what's coming up next that you're really excited about?
So I currently have 2 anthologies out, Weird World War III and Weird World War IV. I'm working on Weird World War III China. So in the middle of that. I'm also working on a book called, or tentatively titled, Wormwood Down, which is think of it's kind of like a Weird World War III novel, actually. Think about the Xenophon's 10,000 meets World War III, and that's so alien craft crash lands in the Russian Far East. A Delta Force or CAG, whatever you want to call them, is deployed to recover it, and the Chinese also invade Russia to attempt to get it. And obviously things don't all go to plan, and they have to fight their way back home. So that's what I'm working on there. And then of course the YouTube channel. So definitely check out Through a Glass Darkly. Oh, the other two things, I have a story that's in Robo Soldiers called Manchurian that hopefully is nominated for Nebula consideration in the novelette category. There aren't a lot of novelettes in that area, so definitely check that out. And then I have another story called They Only Dig at Night that comes out in Worlds Worlds Long Lost, that comes out in Bane from Bane in December. So that's what I'm working on.
Very exciting.
Very cool.
Awesome, guys. Thanks so much for your commentary on this. We'll be linking up together soon to go over the other half of season 3 of Love, Death, and Robots. That's all the time we have for the Lore and Valor podcast tonight. Hope to see you next time. If you've enjoyed our content, please consider liking, subscribing, ringing a bell, leaving a comment below. I did not look this up, so if I said anything wrong, please come at me in the comments and we'll talk about that. And if you're listening to this on audio, don't forget to leave us a 5-star review on your podcast venue of choice. See you next time, and until then, keep up the fire.